Okay. Okay. So, we have already started this chapter, the rise of nationalism, and till now, we to begin with, uh, we studied about the picture by Frederick Soru in 1848, and we studied about that picture, that how he presented the people as belonging to nations, and having them pass, they were passing through the Statue of Liberty, which had the torch of enlightenment in one hand and the charter of the rights of man and citizens in the other hand. And so in Soru's utopian version, means his ideal version, the people of the world were distinct nations, though at that time the nations did not exist as distinct nations, because most of the nations were divided into smaller sections, and these sections were ruled by different kings, different empires. So though they were under one geographical unit, but still the same people under one country were ruled by different kings and rulers. So there were no nation states as at that time. Now what do we understand by a state or a modern state? Now what it basically means is that uh, there would be a proper geographical boundary, and there would be central administration. People would be sovereign, means they will be able to make decisions for themselves, and they will be not under the control of any other country or any other nation. Okay, so what happened during that time, uh, uh, in Europe also, uh, the people, they started to demand for the creation of nation states, and nationalism, it emerged as a force. Now all this we have already done, um, um, when we have started with this chapter. And so people, they started to identify themselves with their countries, with their nations, and started to believe that they have something in common. Now it could be ethnicity, or it could be their history. And so the people started to have a love for their country, and this spirit of nationalism grew in the hearts and minds of the people. And then we did the French Revolution and the idea of the nation, that the first expression of nationalism, it came with the French Revolution in 1789. And we studied about that how in France, from the very beginning, people, they tried to create a sense of collective unity. And so the citizens, the people were called citoyen and not monsieur and madame, as it was done in previous time. And so a new flag was there, and a constitution, the Estates General was elected by the active body. And so changes came in France during this French Revolution. And then we also studied that under Napoleon, we also studied a little bit about the Napoleonic Code, or the Civil Code of 1804, that how this code brought about so many changes in the administrative field. Serfdom, it was removed, and feudalism was removed. The privileges which were based on birth earlier, they were also changed. New administrative measures were brought about. And then transport and communication systems, they were also improved. Then in the cities, the guild restrictions, they were also removed. And now the people had uniform laws and uniform measures, methods of uniform weights and measures. So all this we have already done. And then I think we also had a look about the making of nationalism in Europe and the aristocracy. We also saw about the aristocracy and the middle classes, that how with the onset of the industrial revolution, a new class was formed, which was called as the middle class. And among these classes, this new middle class, it comprised of industrialists, businessmen, professionals. And so this was an educated class. Now under this educated liberal minded classes, for the first time, the idea of national unity, it emerged. Okay. And so we have done till here. Now we'll move forward and we'll have a look at 2.2 on page 9. What did liberal nationalism stand for? Now, the ideas of national unity in the early 19th century, they were closely linked to the ideology or to the principle of liberalism. Now, what does the term liberalism mean? Now, liberalism is taken from the Latin root word liber, meaning free or freedom. And so, for these new middle classes, when they wanted liberalism, so this liberalism, it stood for the freedom for the individual. Under monarchical setup and dictatorship, the people, they did not have any freedom and no rights also, as we have studied in civics. And so basically, now during this period, the middle classes, they started to ask for freedom, and this was freedom for the individual and equality for all, means everyone should be treated equally before the law. So what they wanted, that the person and any individual should be able to decide for himself. He should be free, there should be liberty for the person, and all people should be treated equally before law. As we have seen in case of last year, when you have done French Revolution, all people were not treated equally, and some were active citizens, some were passive citizens, some did not even had the right to vote. So people were not treated equally, and the system was based on privileges which were based on birth. All right. And so that is why now the people, they started asking for equality for all. And then if we talk about in political terms, then liberalism, what it basically meant, that the government in the country should be by the consent of the people. Monarchy is not from the consent of the people. It is a hereditary form of government. After the king, what happened? His son will become the next king. And we have studied dictatorship also. People under dictatorship, people take the power by force illegally, and they rule according to their wishes. And so politically, what we can say now, under liberalism, what they meant is that they wanted a government which was from their consent, which they wanted to approve of, or a government which the people wanted to rule over them. And then from the time of the French Revolution, liberalism has also stood for the end of monarchy, autocracy, and the privileges which were given to the church or the clergy. Then it also meant that the constitution, there should be a body of rules and regulations to run a country. And then all this, there should also be a representative government, and a parliament should be there. So parliament should be there, which is elected by the people, and this body should make laws for the people. Then during 19th century, the liberals, they also wanted the uh, capacity of the people to own private property. Under the French Revolution, if you remember, all the people were not allowed to own property. So now they also wanted that the people should have the right to own property also. Now, when we are talking about equality before law, now that does not mean universal adult franchise or universal suffrage. And if you remember, YouTube. Yeah. Where is Akshat? What are you doing?
Ma'am, it was Tanay.
No, it was written Akshay Bhatnagar. Remove you from call.
No, ma'am was making noise, ma'am. Tanay.
Okay. No, no. No. Okay. Tanay, mute your call. And Akshat Bhatnagar, are you there on call?
Yes, ma'am.
What you did? Beta, here we are trying to get some studies on. So all of you simply don't mess with your screen. And don't try to find out all the options available here that you can do later on. As of now, simply study. Is that understood? Okay. So let's continue. Now, if you remember, under the French Revolution, uh, all people did not have the right to vote. Only those people who owned property and who gave taxes equal to 3 days of a laborer's wage, only those people had the right to vote. And under the Jacobins, under the rule of the Jacobins, only for a brief period of time, all men 21 years and above, they had the right to vote. But when Napoleon came to the throne in 1804, then again it was only limited suffrage, means only people owning property, they had the right to vote. And the women, they were reduced to a status of a minor, means they were under the control of their fathers or husbands. And so throughout the 19th and the early 20th centuries, the women and people who did not have property, they had so many, they organized so many movements demanding equal right to vote. Okay, so this was a political sphere. Now in the economic sphere, if you talk about liberalism, it stood for the freedom of the markets, means there should be free movement of goods and people. And so that is what they wanted. And they wanted that the restrictions which were imposed by the governments or by the kings or by the rulers on goods and capitals, they should be removed. And so during the 19th century, this was a strong demand which came from the middle classes. You know, now these middle classes were basically businessmen, industrialists and traders and professionals. So obviously they were involved in trade and business. So they wanted that all the restrictions which were there in the movement of goods and capital, means money, they should be removed so that there is a free flow for trade. Now they have also given an example, that let us take the example of the German speaking regions. Now at that time, Germany was not a nation as we know of now. It was broken up into very small principalities. And so let us take an example of Germany. Now under Napoleon, uh, Germany was constituted into a confederacy or a union of 39 states. So Germany was not a united country. It was a union of 39 states, and all of these states, they had their own currency and their own systems of weights and measures. So if a businessman or a merchant or a trader, he was traveling in 1833 from Hamburg to Nuremberg to sell his goods, now he had to pass through 11 custom barriers and pay a custom duty of about 5% at each one of them. So you could well imagine how difficult it was for the businessmen, for the traders and the industrialists. One more problem was that the duties or the taxes, they were according to the weight and measurement of the goods. And you know, in all the small principalities, the breakup parts of Germany, they had different sets of weights and measures. So you know what happened, what that means is that taxes in each, as they pass through each custom barrier, the taxes levied would be different, because each different state would be having a different currency, means a different measurement. And see, they have also given an example also. So what that meant was that now since each region has their own system of weights and measures, so it means so much calculations. And example, measure of cloth, which was called as the ell. Now, in each region, it meant different length. So, an ell of textile material, if you buy it in Frankfurt, you will get 54.7 centimeter. Same ell was 55.1 in Mainz, Nuremberg 65.6 centimeter, and in Freiburg 53.5 centimeters. So the same measurement, like for in today's example, you can understand the centimeter being different in different states of India, like it not being or you can say a meter. You know, 1 meter is 100 centimeter. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So now what it meant was that this 1 meter will not be 100 centimeter in each of the states in India. Like if in UP it is 100 centimeter, then in MP it will be 97 point something, or in Orissa or Odisha as of now, it will be 98 point something. So that is what it meant. Now this was very tiresome for the businessmen and traders, because it meant so many calculations and giving money and taxes to at so many different places. And so these conditions were seen as obstacles to the economic growth for the commercial classes, and they argued, or they wanted a unified economic territory, a territory which had same rules or same measures and same currency for all the people living in that territory, so that there is a unhindered movement, means a movement which is not hindered by, or there are not no obstacles in the movement of goods, people and capital. And so as a result, in 1834, a customs union which was called as the Zollverein, it was formed, and it was initiated by Prussia, and later on it was joined by most of the German states. And this custom union, or the Zollverein, it abolished all the trade barriers and reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to just 2. And then later on, you know, with the with when railways were also introduced, so with
Ma'am,
that there was
excuse me.
yes, beta.
Ma'am, I want to ask what is the meaning of tariff barriers? Ma'am, please can you repeat it? Ma'am, tariff
Beta,
barriers.
beta, tariff is tax which you have to pay.
Okay,
All
ma'am.
right, and just like in the above paragraph, I told you that they had to pass by 11 custom barriers. So at 11
Yes,
places
ma'am.
they have to pay the custom duty or the taxes or the tariff. All right, so that was abolished. All these barriers of taxes at different places, it was abolished. All right, and the currencies also, which were over 30, now they were reduced to 2. So you know, like earlier they had to pass through 11 custom barriers and they have to pay a custom duty of 5% at each one of them. Now all that was removed. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so then when railways were introduced, you know, it helped in the mobility also. And now it also helped in the control and the making use of uh, all the economic interests. But basically what we could say is railways help in the mobility also. And then, you know, all these things, this the formation of the Zollverein or the custom union, and the removal of all the tariff barriers and what, it helped in the economic unification of the state. And when it led to economic unification, now this economic unification, it strengthened the uh, sentiments of the people for a political unification of the country also. Means when the country in this way was economically unified, that they were having the same weights and measures and the same currency, so it led further for the people to fight for or to demand for political unification also. Okay. And then in 1815, okay, no. So we will start with, we have already done this. Let's come to 2.3, a new conservatism after 1815. Okay, now after the death of Napoleon in 1815, the governments in Europe, they were driven by a spirit of conservatism. See, what is conservatism? It is a philosophy that stressed that the importance of tradition, and it believed in the established institutions and customs, and they did not believe in quick change. They basically, the conservatives, they did not like much change, and even if they thought that if change is bound to be there, then it should be very slow. All right. And so the European government, which were formed in Europe after the death of Napoleon in 1815, so they were driven by a spirit of conservatism. And the conservatives, they basically believe that all the established traditional institutions of state and the society, like the monarchy, the church, social hierarchies, means high rich classes, the nobility and all that, and then the middle classes and the lower classes, it should be like that only. And they should be preserved. The conservatives thought that they should be preserved, they should not be changed. But the conservatives, they still did not propose that they should go back to pre-revolutionary days. Now, what that meant was that they thought that the institutions, the all the established institutions, they should stay as it is, but there should be some changes in administrative field. That is what they thought. So they realized that the changes which were brought about Napoleon uh, in administrative fields, they basically helped in the strengthening of traditional institutions like the monarchy. So what they meant, what they thought, that monarchy should not be removed, the traditional institutions should not be removed, only there should be some modernization in administrative field. So they thought that they should have a modern army, a good bureaucracy, and moving in a strong economy, and then feudalism and serfdom, it should be abolished, and all this would be able to strengthen the existing monarchies of Europe. And so as a result, in 1815, the representatives of the European powers like Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, now all these had together defeated Napoleon. They met in Vienna, and this was to draw up a settlement for Europe. And this Congress of Vienna, it was hosted by the Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich, and the delegates in this Congress of Vienna, they drew up a Treaty of Vienna in 1815, and the main object of doing was that they will undo the changes which were brought about by Napoleon in Europe. And so as a result, the Bourbon dynasty, which had been removed earlier from France, it was restored to power, and France also lost all its colonies or all the territories which it has annexed under Napoleon. Then what they did, a series of states were set up. Many states were set up on the boundaries of France, so that France will not try to expand itself in future. And so what happened, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which included Belgium, it was set up on the north. Then Genoa was added to Piedmont, and this was done in the south. Then Prussia, it was given new territories on its western front, while Austria was given control of northern Italy. So basically, all this was done, means all the changes that were brought about by Napoleon. This Treaty of Vienna, it was basically drawn to undo everything that was done under, to do most of the changes that were brought about under the Napoleonic War. Then so they did so many changes, and then a series of states were set up on the boundaries of France, so that, you know what happens, it does not try to expand itself in future. Then but the German Confederacy of 39 states, it was left untouched. And then in the east, Russia, it was given a part of Poland, and while Prussia was given a portion of Saxony. Now, the main intention of doing all this was to restore the monarchies that had been overthrown by Napoleon. So, like I told you, the main reason why this Treaty of Vienna was drawn, so that conservatism should be brought back to Europe, and all the monarchies which were, or all the dynasties which were removed by Napoleon, they should be brought back to power in Europe. Okay. So now conservative rules or regimes were set up in 1815, and the regimes which were set up, they were autocratic in nature. Are you able to hear me, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, okay. And are you able to understand also?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
So they were autocratic in nature. What do you understand by the word autocratic? Anyone? Come on, class 10th, autocratic. Listen, I've told you people before also, I don't like this one-way conversation. Haan, beta.
Ma'am, like the Nazi did in, ma'am, like the Adolf Hitler, ma'am, it is
Ma'am,
the example,
ma'am,
ma'am, which is
concentration of
run
power in
primarily by
the
the
hands
single
of one
leader
person.
and his party. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, which
So,
is, ma'am, leaded by the
say that.
single leader.
Okay. Single leader and he having all power. All right. And whose power were not controlled by any constitution or any other body. So an autocratic leader having all power, absolute power, and he could do as he wished. So these regimes which were set up after this Treaty of Vienna, now they were all autocratic in nature. What does that mean? They did not tolerate any type of criticism and saying no to them. Means whatever was being told to the people, they have to do it. They did not like any criticism or any dissent, and they also tried to curb. Means if the people they wanted, they demanded freedom, liberty, equality. So all these activities were curbed very forcefully by the autocratic governments. And then most of these governments, they also imposed censorship. Censorship is, control. We have right now in our country, we have freedom of speech and expression, and we also have freedom of press. Yes or no? Do we have or not?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But at that time they started to have this censorship. So whatever was being printed or said in newspapers and books and plays and songs, everything that talked about liberty, everything that talked about freedom, now it was censored and it was not allowed to be printed. But the memory of so what we can say is that though the nationalists, the liberal minded people, they were suppressed by these autocratic regimes, but still the memory of the French Revolution, it continued to inspire the liberals. And one of the main issues or demands which were taken up by these liberal nationalists was that they criticized this whole order, and they also tried to get freedom of the press so that they can publish or present their views in front of the people with liberty and with freedom. Okay, so we will stop here today. Any questions?